All right, let's get her going. The Real Kyper and Bourne Show. Sportsnet 590, Sportsnet 360, Sportsnet Plus from 4 to 6. And wherever you download your pod, you can find us. Text us at 590 if you have any causes and concerns, including the one that Sammy's leaving us tonight. He's bailing on us. Rome is almost burning here with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he's going to Vegas, baby.
Yeah,
Vegas.
Yeah. It is an interesting time to leave. I will admit.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
Like, if there's a time you can go, it's
right
game 42. However, if they lose tonight,
Yeah.
and let's say they make a trade or fire the coach,
I'll be touching down.
You're going to be.
I'll be touching down in Vegas, checking the old Sportsnet app, being like, "What happened?"
on camera from Vegas
right.
tomorrow.
I already got your replacement set up for tomorrow.
Oh, who is it?
Buddy,
It's Disco Dan.
Oh, Daniele.
Yele in
Is
the
he,
house.
is he coming to
tomorrow.
sit in here?
Oh, yeah. I told him, as of now, you start warming up like you're Tom Hankey.
He did drop a Tom Hankey on him.
Because you're going sidearm tomorrow.
I told Yele he doesn't have to do it if he doesn't
No,
want
he's
to.
doing it.
So,
He's doing it.
well, we'll see. It's up to him.
All right, here we go. 11 games on tap, including the Toronto Maple Leafs on this edition of the Real Kyper and Bourne Show on Calgary to try and shut down a 4-game losing streak.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a million places we're going to go in the next little while, but Leaf Nation woke up today and found the Leafs in a wild card position. Does that matter to you guys at all? Does that
Matters to me.
it does?
Yeah.
Or is that just a kind of a systematic thing and you still see the Leafs where you've seen them
No.
as a week ago?
They were doing okay.
Does 1 week
I
now
hate that clip.
cause
I love it.
a panic
Because
on a wild card position instead of that comfortable position in
I'll
the
tell
Atlantic?
you, here's why it matters to me. Not because of the wild card position, but because the team behind the wild card position is 1 point behind them, the Tampa Bay Lightning. And the spot after wild card is a concerning spot. Now, by points percentage, they're still technically in third in the division, but the point is it's a tight division. And, it matters that things are extremely close.
I would say it's very disheartening to look at the standings and see them out of the top 3 because, over this era of Leafs hockey and the way the standings have been, it's just something you've been able to kind of not think about a lot.
Yeah.
It's like you've measured this team against the playoffs and what they're going to do in the playoffs.
Show me the playoffs.
And clearly it has not gone well. But
Playoffs?
But looking at it now and seeing them, I'm like, oh, is this a possibility? Like seeing them out of that top 3 is jarring to me. I have to say.
Well, that brings me to a couple questions. So we were talking about trade candidates, and they're playing the Flames tonight. The Flames, for a long time, were the team that, the Leafs were coveting their assets, right? It was Chris Tanev. Like, oh, can we get Chris Tanev? Noah Hannafin's available. And I asked you today, could they get Elias Lindholm? Like, could Lindholm be the guy, that plays center for them, maybe pushes Tavares to wing the way that O'Reilly came and pushed him to wing? But all of a sudden you look at the two teams and you go, Flames are pretty good.
They've won 4 in a row.
And the Leafs aren't that great, right?
They're not, but things can cool down quickly for them.
For Calgary.
No, for the Leafs.
Yeah.
With a win tonight and maybe a point Saturday night, even an overtime loss, taking 3 out of 4 points into Seattle, a team that they have proven that they can beat. Now you're 5 of 6 points coming home. Is that enough to just calm the waters down and bring everything back to, they're a pretty good team, and maybe they should consider getting a Tanev or a Lindholm? And are we back to that conversation pretty quick with a successful next 3 games? Because the next question is, how ugly could it get?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing.
If they lose tonight and lose to Vancouver.
It's a really funny thing to be like, if they go get 5 of 6, they're on the road against a team. Here's their last 10. Calgary last 10, 7-3-0. Seattle 8-2-0. Vancouver 7-2-1. So they're going to go on the road and just take 5 of 6. Do you know what I mean? Here, what I'm getting at?
I'm listening. I'm listening, and we're only still halfway through here of the season.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But these next 3 games look to me like a real fork in the road.
Yeah.
And you know what Yogi Berra says? And Sammy, if you ask me who Yogi Berra is, I'm going to come over there and slap you in the head.
Buddy, I know who Yogi Berra is. Come on.
All right.
He's seen the cartoon.
I saw your jacket you're wearing today, and I don't know if you know the difference between Yogi Berra and Yogi Bear.
You know, I wore that jacket a million times. The first time you ever said anything about it. Anyways, continue.
But it looks like you mugged Yogi Bear. I'm telling you right now.
I can put it on for the next segment if you want. So
It's too hot in here.
It is
so fork in the road. You got to take it.
Yeah, there's a
according
fork in
to
the
Yogi
road,
Berra.
take it.
So where are you on? Like how pivotal? Like tonight, Saturday night, and Sunday against Seattle is. How is this? Is this their season on the line in these next 3 games potentially?
Hey, boo boo.
All right, I'm gonna ask you something.
Yeah.
So, Sports Talk Radio is about just kicking around sports. You know, you're kicking things around, right? Hypotheticals, what if? We're just talking about the local sports team.
Until you start something.
Well, and I don't mean to do that, but I know. What if it goes poorly over the next 3 games here or whatever, and you know they don't have success on the road against very good teams, and you're talking about, okay, you know, you need maybe 2 defensemen, you need a center, you need a goalie, whatever it may be. What would it look like if the Leafs were sellers?
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure?
Sellers?
What would it look like, hypothetically?
Listen, they're going in
I'm
tonight.
not saying they are sellers. I think they're buyers.
They're to JB's
God.
point.
Just
okay,
asking.
they've got a 4-game losing streak going into tonight. If it turns into a get ready for this.
The schedule.
What happens if it turns into a 9-game losing
Why
streak?
is their schedule that hard after that too?
Double Jets.
Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle, Winnipeg, All-Star break.
None of those teams have been any good.
Listen to me.
It's a fair question.
Where? Okay, let's say they don't lose 9 in a row, but they've lost 8 out of 9.
Yeah.
Where is that question now on going out there and getting a tan of still? You're saying, does it change?
Well, and I'll tell you where this came from. I did Calgary radio today. My boy George Russick, we were chatting about things, and he said, he asked me the question about the Flames, and they're having some success. And does that still mean that you would want to trade Tanev, Hanifin, Lindholm, all these guys? And I said, of course you do. You know, they need to be realistic that even if they got in the playoffs, this isn't the year they're going to win a cup. And they would be so much better off going forward, getting assets for those guys, rather than doing what the Raptors did, trading for Pirtle, pushing into playoffs as a team below 500.
Well done, Barney.
Thank you.
Very
and
well
then
done.
you've got nothing to show for it when you should have made those moves when you had the chance to move them. And all of a sudden I had this epiphany. It's not impossible that the Leafs could be there if things went poorly enough for a stretch of games. So I was thinking what it would look like if they were to trade Mitch Marner, TJ Brody, Tyler Bertuzzi, and all of a sudden you have Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, the assets you got back from all these guys. Are you better positioned in the years ahead to win a cup?
Wow.
Well, you know what? It's not your fault, this conversation.
You're the guy from Good Will Hunting?
No.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, it's not your fault. Yeah, we've had a lot of guests. I've done this for quite a while, even through television over the years. I can't recall too many times when I was just like had a whoa moment. Our buddy Bukala, our pro scout yesterday, really gave me a whoa moment. Books started this yesterday. where he said, what if it's so bleak that you can't throw and chase whatever you have for more assets?
What if this is not the year to chase it?
What if it's not the year to chase it? Like you've already, as we have alluded to, Kyle Dubas didn't leave a lot for Brad Treliving. And if the season and maybe the next 4 or 5 games looks not in your favor, are you still having a conversation to give up a first rounder for Chris Tanev?
You're talking about giving up Cowan or Minton, a first rounder. You know, I just read an article by Dom Lucian on the way in here that one of the things was TJ Brody. He was one of the best at defending the blue line last year. And statistically, this year he's bottom 10 in the league. And he was great at retrievals. This year he's a bottom puck retrieval guy. Yeah. So all of a sudden a guy you counted on is not good. When the core 4 are off the ice, your depth guys are, well below 50%. Like in past years, they've been above it in terms of scoring chances. So, yeah, there's some things that make you go, do you want to chase it this year? Now, I want to be very clear that I think anytime you have the elite talents, the Leafs do, and they're in their prime, and, you've seen what a bunch of these guys can do. In a year, anyone can win. I think they're more likely this year to win the Stanley Cup than miss the playoffs if you kept everything the same. I really do. I think it's more likely. So I'm not saying they should sell, but it's worth entertaining the thought, the exercise. What does it look like if you were to do those things?
Okay, let's go to our the president of the Leaf fan club here and just say, optically, how is your fan base? I don't even begin to wonder what Bay Street would think about watching the Leafs say, this is the year we're not going to be all in.
Right.
I think there's a pretty strong, apathy is not the right word, but sort of a disdain towards this group. And I don't think that Willie contract helped anything. I think it's the spoiled guy narrative is still out there big and maybe worse than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And doing a shake-up to the core and having different people come in and trading away guys that have been here for a long time, I don't think that's going to be as badly received as some people might think it would be.
Right.
Like, I do think there is some credence to them being like, it's time that this changes a bit. And I think people would be a lot more receptive than I think you may think.
Yeah, just move on.
Go ahead if you have something.
You go ahead.
I was going to say that.
But like Marner and Brody, like those are like, that's changes your whole thing. That's changing the whole thing, which this whole thing hasn't worked particularly great, as we all know.
Yeah.
So.
And, Marner, I mentioned because he has a year and a half left. You give someone 2 playoff runs, his value's through the roof. The one thing I do believe is that if you think you're in the pack of teams from the 5th best team to the 12th best team, somewhere in that sort of pocket, you're taking your chances on Joe Woll as the goalie. You're hoping to against all hope that he comes back and he can do it. You're not trading an asset to improve from 9th to 7th or whatever. You're just kind of hoping he can be the guy without spending there.
We've covered the Leafs for a very long time. Yeah. I mean, that small window of Joseph Woll's play before he got hurt was the type of play that teams can climb on the back of and ride into a
and if he's
first,
hurt
a second
or he struggles,
round win. Right?
Shrug it off and go.
That's how good he was.
Yeah. And like we've alluded to multiple times, he was in the middle of one of the greatest Leafs regular season performances of the last 5 years when his ankle exploded.
Yes.
He was unbelievable.
So good.
If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, do you want to just get a little bit of a sample size of how good he can get, how quickly? And again, I'm thinking it's like against all odds here that a guy can be off for 2 months with a high ankle sprain and then come back and hit that mark that he had before he got hurt, especially when you're dealing with inexperience and especially when you deal with a guy that has been prone to these type of injuries before. Mm-hmm. But do you want to see a Joseph Woll back before you make any definitive decisions on which way you want to go at the trade deadline?
I just think that where they are is changing my tune from you can't trust a guy who's played 15 games this season, is 23 and has had a lot of injuries, to I don't think you spend the asset to shore up the position and you at least cross your fingers and just hope, with that position. There's a few, you're not good enough to say we have to patch all 5 holes and spend whatever. You may want to improve still. You may want to add a defenseman here or there or whatever, a Sealer or Walker or something like that. But I just feel less confident about the idea that they're going to go sell the farm to really push the chips in.
And Treliving has said in multiple different platforms that he's not really a trade deadline guy, that he doesn't love it. So either way, like selling off may not happen or an adding may not happen. Like he doesn't love to use the trade deadline in general. He's mentioned it multiple spots. So I don't know.
What does this mean for Sheldon Keefe if they don't like moving players? Are they looking at the Oilers and saying, we don't want to fire Sheldon, but we also don't want to trade the core of our team away. Should we just make this one big change and see if that can be? Did Berube take over the Blues the year they won? Did he take it over that year or the year before? I know Dan Bylsma took over the Penguins the year they won the Cup.
That's a good question.
I don't remember exactly when he took them over, but my point is,
they were in last place.
It's not unprecedented for coaches to come in and take pretty good teams the distance. So again, I think Sheldon's a good coach. I'm just saying, I'm talking about what their options are.
Sheldon needs some wins here in a hurry. I think we can all agree.
That's where we're at.
Like I really, I'm not going to say I want it because I don't think that's going to change anything. Really, like if you gun to my head, ask me, are they going to take off if Craig Berube is the coach of this team? My answer would be probably not. Like I really think they kind of are what they are. But at the same time, it's pro sports, and the optics of this with a team that's supposed to be really good, you lose 7 or 8 in a row with the Leafs.
Yeah.
And you've been here for a long time. It's going to get louder and louder here.
So that brings me to the next question. If in fact that what you are suggesting could be more reality in a quick hurry on this might not be the year to push your chips in yet again. And now you go into the summer. And again, I don't know what momentum is there. Is it a quiet first round exit? Is it you won a round and now you lost in the second? Where is that cut line? Where is that PGA cut line where who gets to decide moving forward? Is it like Brendan Shanahan's been here 10 years, guys?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So where is the cut line on him on if you're going to potentially be in a position to sell a few pieces and then move a big name like Marner? Mm-hmm. Is Brendan doing that? Does he get the green light from Leaf Nation to suggest that I can tweak this, I can get us back in, or we kind of got to regroup and start again, but I'll give you a championship in 2 or 3 years? Like, where's Leaf Nation on Brendan Shanahan making these changes moving forward? Because the one thing about Brendan Shanahan for the last 10 years is it's really been from the moment he was hired up until this point where like he's not called an audible on anything. It's not. He's never gone. He's never gone to a plan B.
That is the defining trait.
You're talking about a plan B. Does Brendan get a chance for the first time to come back to the fan base and go, yeah, it didn't quite work, but we got a new plan and we're going to change the Marners or anyone else here and give me another chance here because I'm the guy to do it?
I mean, that's a great question. And I do think that how it goes in the playoffs matters a lot because the thing you're talking about, the plan A, was that this core group will pull them through.
Double down, triple down,
quadruple down.
Yeah. This
Willie
core
Nylander
group
gets signed, quadruple down.
Yeah.
So he's faced that question so many times after a playoff loss and said, it'll happen, it'll happen, it'll happen. It's not like you can say, okay, now he's trying plan B. Let's see if the second option works out. He's had the chance to do it so many times that I don't know. It would be tough to see how it going that way, Kep, I guess. It's just tough for me to imagine them saying, okay, you've been stubborn with this for 10 years, but now we're going to see if it works the other way now that we've lost 8 straight times in the early playoffs or whatever. I don't know.
I think Brendan Shanahan's name has been mentioned more by Leaf fans in the last little while than I remember it being
the plan
talked
is
about.
supposed to be culminating now, the best of it, right?
I think when you bring in a new general manager and you sort of keep everything pretty similar, people's kind of antennas have gone up, right? Like with Dubas, you knew Shanahan was in charge, but Dubas was big, tied to the core four, we can and we will, or whatever. When they bring in another guy and it's just exactly the same, the way, other than, them adding snot, whatever, that really has not been very snotty.
No.
They've been quite healthy, in fact. Their nose has not been running much. But, when it's exactly the same, I think people are starting to be like, well, okay, well, then really, I guess we do know who's in charge here.
We do know that another loss, in April this year will mean something in terms of major change. Like whether from January to April, that means Sheldon Keefe, or that means Marner or Nylander or Matthews or whoever, Tavares, or it means Shanahan or whatever. There's going to be major change if they don't have success at this point. So do they not?
But is there? Does Shanahan have another year on his deal?
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
Multiple years.
But we've had this conversation for 4 straight years.
Yeah.
And you're like, surely this will be the year, but will it?
Surely.
Right? Like I had this conversation after the Habs series. That was 3 playoff failures ago.
But here's a thought on that, which is the best way to deflect some of that heat would be to change before a failure and say, we're going to go in another direction. We're going to, we're able to get a first and a prospect for this guy, and we're able to get a first for this guy. You look at what, D-men go at the deadline, and what a guy like Bertuzzi would, I don't know what Bertuzzi would have gone for last year.
The first.
Yeah. Like you look at the haul, if you're sitting here going into the summer and you got 3 firsts all of a sudden, could you turn that, and you have the cap space from a big name? I think you could sell that as a front office a little bit more as buying time.
The other equation that factors into this is there's a new boss maybe for Brendan Shanahan, and there may be a new boss for Messiah, who we heard today just prior to our show.
Hour and 15 minutes, you talked about.
Hour and 15 minutes. We got all the inside stuff from our Raptor boys.
Yeah.
And like now Keith Pelly comes in and he's the new CEO. And I don't know, I can't sit here and definitively tell you how it works now.
Yeah.
But I assume that both those guys have to go through Keith Pelly.
Yeah.
And where is Keith Pelly now here, coming in from all those years being the commissioner of European golf? And
has he made any quotes on the Maple Leafs over this time? Can we Google
like,
Keith Pelly Leafs and see if anything comes up?
I would think if this would be a quiet year where the Leafs don't make a lot of noise, he'd have to kind of reassess everything as a whole, and he would be the guy who decides who gets another chance and who doesn't.
It's funny, like if he were just like a strongly opinionated guy on the Leafs and was like, "We're not doing this anymore. You got to trade. You guys aren't winning with this group. You got to trade someone." It'd be funny to see how that would trickle down. But I was just kicking it around because I do see a world where the cap goes up. You trade a few guys, on high salaries. You've got a bunch of picks all of a sudden. You still have a couple really good core players and Morgan Riley on the back end. Can you turn this cap space and these picks into?
Can I do trust tree with you guys?
Sure.
After this offseason, like, am I sure I want Treliving to be the one doing that?
Oh, you thought it was poor enough?
It hasn't been very good. Like,
it's a legitimate thought.
The guy seems like a great guy and all this stuff, but like the moves he made in the offseason, none of them have been home runs other than like Simone Benoit and Martin Jones, who saved him.
He's going to be the guy.
I know.
It's too. He hasn't had a chance.
I'm not saying he's.
I understand.
I'm asking myself that question.
Yes,
if I want that to be the. So
yeah.
Well,
I think it's a worthwhile point. But he is going to be the guy.
No, it's before you ask the tree living question, you ask the Brendan Shanahan question, because if it's Brendan, it's Brad. If it's not Brendan, there's a very good chance it might not be Brad because all bets would be off on then who's the new guy coming in.
Well, it's funny because when Brendan took the job of president here, president didn't mean what it means now, a decade later, where Gorton is the guy behind Hughes and Rutherford's the guy behind Alvin. Like, the president felt more like a guy who was in business, not in hockey. Now the president job feels more tied to hockey than it did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
listen, I think the one thing that I've gotten out of this season is, again, where the Winnipeg Jets, I've got Pierre-Luc Dubois, and he's supposed to be this core guy and a leader and a top 3 guy who's going to make $8-9 million. They got to trade him. Like, think about the pieces that they got for a guy who they traded for at a weakness.
Alan, I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Velarde and Iafallo. Iafallo was a very popular guy in LA. They loved him.
Yeah.
And now they love him in Winnipeg. But
And Campari, who was a first-round pick plus a second in that trade.
Like, those are...
that's a haul.
That's a haul.
Yeah.
That's a haul. And that changes...
Is Mitch Marner worth less than that? I don't think so.
Oh, my gosh. More.
Yes.
More.
So, it's...
But so is Willie.
Yeah.
Not with that anchor contract.
But that's how you start thinking. But that's a major commitment, and that is, without a doubt, a plan B. But you gotta get there.
Yeah. I just, the one thing that we do find with the show is that the conversations that people have off air with us tend to be worth having on air. Like your hockey dressing room. Some of this came from talking to a buddy who that's what his beer league team's talking about in the locker room. It's like,
fans are what makes us do this.
I understand,
it's like,
but
we should have the conversations they're having.
For sure. But it really, when I had, all right, put some thought into that and I come in and go, Kyper, should they go get Lindholm? What do you think about Elias Lindholm? And you thought, okay, well, what's Lindholm cost? You start thinking about, okay, you got to trade away one of your prospects. You don't have many picks. You traded that guy away. And now you're going to lose in 6 instead of 4?
Yeah.
To Florida in the first round. It's what is the wisest thing to do with your assets?
But
and
can I just say one thing, though? It's like, for the Leafs, even if they want to make these trades, they cannot make them like they've made the last few years, which has been a disaster. And that's giving up top picks for rentals. Mm-hmm. It is the Foligno thing. And for the life of me, I don't know how you set up a Ryan O'Reilly trade and you don't have a commitment that he is staying and re-signing.
Yeah.
You cannot trade. You can still trade for Chris Tanev.
Mm-hmm. He's got to be staying here.
You better make sure that the contract's done on the extension and he's going to be here for the next 2 or 3 years.
You look at what Tampa Bay did in getting Brandon Hagel. It cost them a lot. But they got him for years.
Leafs
right?
were in on that, remember?
Yeah.
That's a what if.
And no kidding. And, the Leafs also did really well in like the Jake McCabe trade because you get him for years cheap.
And they had Lafferty too.
Did they?
Oh, yeah, that'd be nice to have.
Like you're talking about Lindholm coming. Like Ryan O'Reilly would have been a difference maker on and off the ice for this team.
Yes.
This year.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Big time.
And did they just assume he was going to stay?
That I don't know. I don't know when and how that would have come together, but a couple of nice pieces at the time. Jeez.
Well,
okay.
We should probably break to get to Francis.
Use none of our clips.
That's okay.
That's
way better than what Keith had to say. Yeah.
No Kyper's Clippers. Have Kyper Clippers ever been shut out before?
That might be the first time
Blanked.
ever. Yeah.
Just like Tavares. Oh, God, Lord.
Lady.
I got to positive.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, as JB alluded to, Eric Francis, who does a terrific job on Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca, will join us to help us tee up Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Calgary Flames tonight. Back after these words. Calgary Flames are hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight, which means we get the expert out of Calgary on. Eric Francis joins us now, senior columnist, one of the best writers on sportsnet.ca. Unless I'm talking to you, JB. Unless I'm talking to Luke Fox. Whoever is on the show is the best writer on sportsnet.ca.
Fair to me. I get it. I get the business.
Eric, how are you, pal? Thanks for joining us.
I'm good, my man. I'm okay with that flexible opinion of yours. That's yeah.
Hey, I got 2 hours of tremendous flexibility. Listen, we're watching the Calgary Flames refuse to go away. And I don't know what that means as the season hits the halfway point, whether or not it'll still be a busy trade deadline for them. Will it not? Who's re-signing? Who's staying? Who's going? Where do you see this thing going other than maybe a legitimate shot at making the playoffs?
Well, I do think they have a legitimate shot at making the playoffs. I think they're a good enough team to make the playoffs, but it always comes with this great, big, giant asterisk, which is, what's going to happen before March 8th. I mean, obviously, they've got significant issues to resolve in terms of whether or not they're going to sign Noah Hannafin, and my intel is telling me they're pretty close. I think that's something they definitely would like to do.
Wow.
And then if you're going to sign him, would you maybe want to sign Chris Tanev as well and solidify a real good, top 4, top 5 defensive group? And then, I think Elias Lindholm is gone, as good as gone. I mean, the asking price for him is astronomical, and I think it's a non-starter. So he's on the move out. So, again, they're moving in a great direction. They've been fantastic for about a month now, and they've got tremendous depth. They're inserting all these youngsters from their minor league team that are looking really good. Like, the future is looking bright, except for you might be missing 2 or 3 significant pieces when it comes to crunch time. So that kind of looms over the whole club for the next little while.
And where do you stand on that direction as a team that sort of seems to be trying we would like to trade the assets and make playoffs and see what happens sort of card? Do you think it should be a massive sell-off, or do you think that it makes sense to kind of play this down the middle a bit? Yeah, Francis, I ask you this because we're talking about the Leafs here, and we're starting to see a lot of parallels.
Yeah. I think you play it down the middle in Calgary, but that's what drives Calgarians crazy, is because this team has been in the mushy middle for 30 years, guys. The 30 years I've covered them. Like, they're always finishing, barely in the playoffs or barely out of the playoffs, and that gets you nothing in terms of really good draft picks. So people in this city there are a lot of people, probably the loudest ones, who are saying tank, tank, tank. But I can tell you that ownership and Craig Conroy are not interested in tanking now or anytime soon, because they believe in the importance of maintaining a solid winning culture, a culture that's always striving to win, and not one that's willing to take steps backwards with an eye on hopefully getting, several steps forward eventually. So I think that they are going to. I think they can, and I think they want to play it down the middle where, yeah, they're going to lose their number one center. But with the depth in the organization, all these youngsters that they've really done well to integrate into their lineup, they think that they could still have a chance of making the playoffs this year. So it is one of those things where you're playing it right down the middle from now right until March 8th and beyond.
Always nice when players step up and give you more than maybe you might have expected. I got to admit, Eric, Sharangovich, I wouldn't have known this guy if I ran him over with a Zamboni. And I'm watching him the other night score the game winner on an absolute rocket. But, talk about a guy that I think Calgary Flames weren't too happy at the time getting when they lost Toffoli to him.
Well, Toffoli was on their top line last year. I think he had like 37 goals. He was their leading point getter, which was a bit of an anomaly. Everybody knew that that's probably not who he is or what he is. And his contract demands were, he wanted to stay several years at an advanced age, and he wasn't fitting into their plans for a retool. So they traded him. Not only did they get Sharangovich, they got a 3rd rounder for him too, which who they're really, really high on, the kid that they drafted. But going back to Sharangovich, he started the year, they didn't know what he was. At one point, they had him on the 4th line, Kyper. Like they didn't know, and he was really timid. On the ice, wasn't a mucker. I think there was legitimate concern. Like, I'm not sure this guy's going to stay in our lineup. But once he found his groove and they put him back on the top line, the guy's a finisher. He's got 6 goals his last 4 games. He's the only Calgary Flame to have scored in the shootout this year. I said that. Only guy. Nobody else other than he scored 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
Everybody else is over. So he's like their number one finisher on the franchise. And they're giving him the puck more and more. Huberdeau's starting to play better, set him up a little more. And people in the city are really excited because really that was really kind of the first significant trade that Craig Conroy had to make as the GM. And I think it's good for the organization that it's turned out to be a pretty good trade and only going to get better as this draft pick kind of emerges. His name is Suniev. Either way, it's a good trade, just even if it was a 1-for-1 at this point in time, because you got a player who's a whole lot younger and he's already got more points than Toffoli.
Is there a chance that the next big trade he has to make involves a goalie? You got Markstrom, you got Vladar, you got Wolf. You think what's the status of the crease in Calgary these days? Marky's been pretty good.
Yeah, Marky's been one of the hotter goalies in the league since we're at Christmas time. Everybody wants to talk about Markstrom being traded except for management. I can tell you behind closed doors, this is a non-starter, guys. This is not something that the organization's thinking of. It's not something they plan on bringing to Jacob Markstrom to see if he'll waive his no-trade clause for this in the next 2 years. That's $6 million per. I think traveling around the league last week to Vegas and Tempe, talking to different people around the league, there's a real feel that the value of high-paid, even though they're proven and reliable goaltenders like Markstrom, the market is very, very low for them right now. Mostly because all the contenders who might need a goalie like that don't have any cap space. But also because of what Vegas did last year with 5 goalies helping them get to the Stanley Cup final. 4 of them were complete unknowns. The other one was Jonathan Quick, who wasn't having a very good year. So teams are doing what the Leafs are doing with Martin Jones and what Jersey's doing with Nico Dawes. Like they're just saying, well, let's just try this guy, see if it works. It doesn't cost us much. And nothing ventured, nothing gained. So nobody's willing to pay the sort of assets you'd have to pay tremendous assets for the Flames to consider trading their MVP. First rounder, probably a top prospect, and a top draft pick at the starting point. And I'm not sure anyone's even thinking about that on top of the $6 million they have to pay. So I don't see a goalie moving, and there's not a marketplace right now for Dan Vladar. He's making too much money for a backup, $2.2 million. I think he's a capable backup. I think he'll be somewhere else next year, and that's when we'll see the Wolf era begin here in Calgary next year.
We're talking to Eric Francis, senior columnist, analyst with Sportsnet. So Tuesday night, of course, it always gets built up. Matthews versus McDavid. And tonight, can we expect Matthews versus Coleman? At 20 goals, he leads the team.
Well, that's an incredible story. I think if you want to really hype it up, it's Connor McZary, they're calling him out here. He's kind of been one of their top players lately. And of course, Saturday, the whole world can't wait to see the big Connor versus Connor matchup.
That's awesome.
Connor McZary and Connor McDavid. But Coleman's been like, guys, it's just been one of those great stories. Like they brought him here to be like a third line defensive stud. And he's now their leading scorer. Like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It just keeps going and going. He's just tied his season career high for 38 points in a year, and there's still 40 games to go. Guy's doing it all for them. He's got the highest plus minus in the league over the last 3 weeks. He does it defensively. He does it offensively. Like this guy is, and he's a leader. I can't say enough about Blake Coleman. Like, if every team had a bunch of hey, he helped Tampa win a cup.
Oh, he sure did.
Tampa will tell you, he
big
was a
time
big part of that, right?
For sure.
Big part of that.
And, he had crazy underlying stats there. I think this Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane line, I think is the best team in the NHL over the last stretch, the best line in the NHL in terms of driving expected goals and all that. Another name worth questioning there. How's things going for Jonathan Huberdeau? Feels like he's got things on a better track.
Yeah, and he missed the last game due to an illness, but he was skating today. He's going to play tonight, he told me. I think he's got 8 points in his last 8 games. There are signs of hope, right? I mean, they need him to be a point-a-game guy for anyone to think about that $10.5 million contract being justified in any way. It's a lot of pressure on the guy. He hasn't responded the way he'd hope. But I do see a lot of positive signs lately, and I'm not just saying that to try and be all overly optimistic for no reason. I mean, he's had some dangles of late where you're like, that's the kind of move or attempted move by a confident hockey player or a guy getting his confidence back. He just played with no confidence. Now it's coming, and we'll see where it goes. Like with Sharon Govich playing as well as he has, and Huberdeau on the other wing, it has the makings of a pretty good top line if Elias Lindholm, plays his part too. So it's interesting to watch.
Listen, this lineup has some very, very good hockey players, and when they traded for Jonathan Huberdeau, I believe that Calgary Flames, especially with his contract, were expecting a superstar. For the most part, Eric, this team has no superstar. Is this a market that needs one, especially looking at the Edmonton Oilers, or is it much like a goalie situation where you may be scared to commit ever again, big money like that, if in fact a player's value drops? And that's certainly happened with Jonathan, but like, where are you in that marketplace without a bona fide superstar?
I think they can get by without one. I mean, obviously on the ice, every team wants a superstar, a go-to guy, an 85-point guy. But I'm not sure that this organization, like obviously he's the most important player in the franchise. When you're making that much money, he's got to come around. And I do believe most people in the organization think he will come around. I know he certainly believes it. But if you're asking from like a fan's point of view, people in this city are so excited about the youth movement that's going on in Calgary. Like, I'll give you an example. My son's 13. He got one of those Heritage Classic jerseys for Christmas, and without a name on the back, because I wasn't sure who his favorite player was. He can't decide who to get on it. And I think that kind of sums up where this team's at. Like, there's nobody that's kind of like the clear fan favorite. Kadri's lived up to expectations. I have to say that. He's playing really, really well. And he's exactly what I think they hoped he would bring. But I don't see many people rushed out to get a Coleman jersey. Honest to God, I think my son's going to get Connor Zary because he represents the future. And he's had a great start. And he's in the Calder Trophy conversation. So that's how I'll answer that by just saying It's the youngsters that people are the most excited about now.
Francis, your kid is going to have the most eclectic jersey closet of all time with that Team Canada Mangiapane jersey and a Connor Zary jersey.
You remember that?
Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome.
That's right. And somewhere deep in that closet, I got a Darren Pupa jersey. Is there anything more eclectic than that?
Wow. I think I ran him one night in Hartford. Then Brad May came in there and just gave it to me.
It doesn't sound fun.
Hey, Eric, really appreciate your time. Enjoy the game tonight. Always welcome on our show, pal. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, always good to be here, boys. You take care.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
I'm hoping for the same energy. I really believe the Leafs are going to come out as hard as they did against the Edmonton Oilers here.
I do, too.
I do believe that for the most part, and I believe this from the top to the very bottom, you're never as great as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. There's somewhere where the middle kind of can tell the truth here. So can the Leafs beat Calgary tonight? I don't know who's favored, who's not. Maybe we'll get that on Game Time with Sammy in the next hour, but I expect a high-energy game again tonight.
Yeah, I do too. I'm this team tends to be at their best, and they have historically when the chips are down, when you think they're done, when they've just embarrassed themselves. And not that they did in Edmonton by any means, but whether it's, against David Ayers or whatever the moment is, they tend to come out after those things and play really well. Go ahead.
Tuesday was that game.
So Tuesday was that game, and they came out like a house on fire. Bertuzzi touches that one. It's 2-0, 5 minutes in on the road in Edmonton. They came out really good. Mm-hmm. It's, that Edmonton team is
good.
Maybe the best team in the league.
Yeah, they're good.
As insane as that sounds right now. I mean, it's possible. So, yeah, you come out with that effort. I expect a better result against the Flames. And
we're expecting the same lines that started in Edmonton, correct? You guys okay with that? I was on the morning show on 590 today, and I made a suggestion that maybe if it's a slow start again for Tavares, maybe you think about putting him on the wing couple of different options. Max Domi's one at center. And then you can think about Mitch Marner at center or Willie Nylander at center. What are your thoughts on the second line? Knives starting with Tavares and Nylander.
I mean, I thought Knives could probably use a night off. You know, the best game he played, did he miss one game due to illness?
2 games. They missed
2
the
games?
extra one.
And then he came back and
fought.
played Pittsburgh and scored an unbelievable goal.
Like Gordie Howe hat trick.
Yeah. He was the best he's ever been in the NHL after a couple of days off. I think he's at a point here where a little rest might have helped him. But I will say, more than ever, I'm willing to hear you on Mitch Marner at center. I'm definitely willing to hear Willie Nylander at center. You need some new looks here.
Like I said yesterday, if there is a new coach that comes in here, that's going to be the first thing he does. And then everybody's going to be like, oh my God, this guy is reinvented. Like, it's just, you can just see it already.
No Samsonov. What does that mean to you? Do you want to hear what Keith had to say about that?
Yeah.
I got to do a read here.
Oh, do you? Okay. Well, so what are your thoughts then on?
My thoughts is that they have no confidence in Samsonov.
Yeah, crazy that this is like such an obvious spot. But you know what it says to me is they know how desperately they need a win, and Keith feels like this is not the time to play experimenting.
No. You got to go with the guy that you think
You're trying to win it like it's a playoff game.
will give you the best chance to win tonight, and no one can argue that it isn't Martin Jones.
And that's why the lines are the same too. They're like, yeah, maybe there's things we need to find out, but we can't afford to lose more games.
All right. From February 1st through the 3rd, all the stars are in Toronto for the NHL All-Star Weekend, and we'll be giving away tickets to the different events in episodes today until January 26th. Today, we have tickets for the NHL All-Star competition featuring 12 NHL All-Stars competing in a series of challenges like the Rogers NHL Hardest Shot to take home a prize of $1 million. $1 million. To enter for a chance to win, text in today's code word SKILLS to 59590, and we have another code word in tomorrow's episode, so be sure to tune in. Today's code word is SKILLS. $1 million, hardest shot. Love it.
God, a little extra incentive behind that wind-up, huh?
I am really looking forward to this because I know there won't be any like Superman capes or funny glasses or...
Oh, it's business time.
Business.
Yeah, it's business.
Let's go.
It's hilarious that it's business time, and then they put them in fruit roll-up jerseys.
Well, they'll be wearing those at the Skills Comp.
Yeah, fair enough.
right? They'll be wearing their home
jerseys.
sweaters or whatever.
That's a good point.
Yeah, which is nice.
All
Might
right.
seem as silly.
Think what could help the Leafs tonight is chasing the game early instead of
not
just
Go down
leading.
early.
go down early.
Yes. Have incentive to keep playing all the way through. Well, you know what's funny is the Leafs get a hard time, justifiably so, for blown leads. They've got, I think, the most comeback, or they're in the conversation, most comeback wins this year. They were.
I'm comfortable with them down a goal in the last period.
I think it was Simmer who said on the broadcast that they have 8 goals with the goalie pulled this year. 8?
To me, I don't know what to think anymore. To me, I want them to get a lead and hold it. That's the ideal scenario, is where it's like they finally figure out a way to hold a lead.
Well,
As opposed to chasing
had
the
a article. My article came out for in the Toronto Star today, and I just talked about just the fundamentals of standing in the right place at the right time when it's needed most.
Yes.
That's what you're looking for
We
tonight.
talked about Babs being right about a lot of things. That man loved someone who stood in the right place. Stand in the right place. It's all he just wants guys to stand in the right place. And they could use a few of that. A few of those guys.
Yep.
After with the lead.
All right. What do you got for me on a score tonight?
The Leafs win going away. 5-2.
Okay, I got 4-2 Leafs.
No idea. I'll be in the sky the entire game.
Sammy's going to Vegas, baby.
Yeah, I'm not going to see a second. Now I'll watch the first little bit before
You
you
got
take
your
off.
cheesy Vegas shirt ready to...
No, not that kind of guy.
Come on.
You seem like a cheesy shirt guy.
Go big or go home, Sammy.
Just based on your general wardrobe.
All right. Good luck, buddy. Bet
Thanks.
with your head, not over it.
The show's not over. We still have an hour. We'll talk in 5 minutes.
Oh, I'll see you again in a minute.
That's okay.
Okay.
No one's saying we're going away. Everybody's sticking around.
Good.
We're back after these commercial breaks. Welcome back to the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. This is the national edition. We are live on Sportsnet, Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver and Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. This hour of Real Kyper and Bourne brought to you by Bet365. Now, Kypreos, Justin Bourne, Sammy McKee, Derek Brandeo, Jen Rolnick. I didn't see Jen's name on this. John? Sammy? Good. Just want to make sure everybody gets credit.
It's on there.
Daniele is coming on the show tomorrow to fill your shoes.
Yep.
Oh, wait till you see Daniele's lineup tomorrow. It's going to be sparkling.
Oh, yeah. Like,
a clean sheet.
I will say, I do worry. There's not like a lot of producers that I worry about taking over for me, but he's a beast. Like, he's very good at this.
He's thorough.
I can bring some marginal takes here and there, so that's kind of why I'm here. But he's very good at
Got
it.
that sweet lefty swing.
There could be a chance by Monday your seat's filled.
Yeah,
Wally Pip, right?
I watched.
You better win a lot of money in Vegas.
I watched the Hangover yesterday. Maybe I'll get stuck there like that.
Hey.
I'll get stuck on a roof.
You're going with your wife, are you not?
Yeah.
I don't like your chances if.
Yeah, we'll see.
She's not afraid of a good time.
No.
All
Don't
right.
threaten her with a good time.
Keep us posted.
Yeah.
In a few minutes, we're going to welcome in former NHL player, agent, general manager. This guy has done it all, and he's done it all on our show. Brian Lawton. Certainly, tons to get into, including the vibe across the country.
You mean the best Canada's ever been at hockey right now?
Earlier on our Leaf edition, you had suggested maybe the Leafs could be.
Don't you put that on me? What's that from Green Mile? What's the
sellers
line?
at the trade deadline, and I am scared to go on social media right now.
Yeah,
because I don't think there's a Canadian fan, and I think it's a bitter pill to swallow in Ottawa. Perhaps the Montreal Canadiens have been a little bit more, prepared for life without the playoffs, but nobody wants to hear that their team's selling in this country, especially Leaf fans.
How many points back of the Leafs do you think the Montreal Canadiens are?
I don't know, 10?
5. Leafs have played 2 less games, but
yeah. You know, one thing I've learned doing talk radio is there's no amount of qualifying an opinion you can do that people will hear if you say something like, could the Leafs be sellers? I said 1,000 things about, I don't think they should, but boy, doesn't matter. I said the words.
I would ask, not to get too inside baseball here, but what would they like us to say?
After 4 straight losses? And
the worst they've looked in the Matthews era, blowing leads.
Yeah.
It's like, what would you like? They've had bad starts. They've had bad starts where we've all questioned it and they've gotten hot and stayed hot. They haven't had a lot of mid-season dips like this.
They're below 100-point pace now, after at the halfway point.
In the earlier show, I said, you're never as bad as you think you are. You're never as good as you think you are. And just to bring into the Leafs into the equation, how can you really, truly be sure when you've watched the Vancouver Canucks the last few years with almost no hope, and then turn around and have the season they're having, or even the Winnipeg Jets, who have been brilliant at being a mid-team, now look like a legitimate contender in the West, or even the Edmonton Oilers, where you watch a disaster start to the season, now put them amongst many competing for a Stanley Cup once again. So
they might be the Cup favorite.
If you're the Leafs, like, what do you do in the next?
Yeah.
You just watch, I guess, them go into Calgary and then go into Vancouver, and then you see what happens here.
I think typically you and I, the way we operate is thinking as if we were inside a team. If you were the general manager and thinking about it, if I was the coach and thinking about it, realistically what you would do. And to make those decisions, you have to, consider what it would look like if you were a seller. You have to consider the options before you can make decisions. And so that's what we do. It's talk radio.
And
you consider the options.
quickly, before you get to Lawton here, and who's waiting, if the Leafs were having the Vancouver Canucks season right this second, I'd still have the same questions about them in the playoffs that I do about this version of the Leafs.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I disagree.
No,
I call BS.
Buddy, they've had 115 points
you wouldn't even be on the show because you'd be doing backflips down Yonge Street if they were the Vancouver Canucks right now.
It's not true. We'd be like, can they get past it? We'd be still having the exact same conversation.
You'd be going, oh, God, they're going to draw Tampa
again. Exactly. We've been having the
Vasilevsky,
exact
here he
same
comes.
conversations. Anyways.
All right, let's welcome in Brian Lawton. Does a terrific job covering the National Hockey League as always, and a lot of experience under his belt. Lots. Just before you came on, we were just talking about assessing your league. It's never, or assessing your team. I don't know if you can go back to your days in Tampa Bay, but is this the hardest it's ever been? Because some days you feel so bad about your lineup, and yet we can see other teams turn it around rather quickly in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months?
Yeah, I don't know if you feel so bad about your lineup, Kyper. You and I had a great conversation earlier this week about this topic, and a lot of it just has to do with the salary cap has compressed everybody together. So, it used to be the era when we were playing there, you had teams like Detroit, New Jersey, Colorado for 10 years. They won all the Stanley Cups. It felt like, with the exception of maybe Dallas snuck one in there in that window. And those days are over now. You don't see that kind of domination from a lot of teams. I think the league is a lot flatter than it's ever been. I think that's partly by design. You've heard the NHL talk about this, that, everybody being in it is better for business. And that's somewhat the case right now. It's never everybody, but more teams are definitely encompassed in this middle. And it's making everyone feel a little paranoid about their team, particularly when you add in the fact that the cap has still not really exploded to where we think it will in the coming years.
Based on this sort of mishmash of standings mess where all these teams seem pretty good, there's no clear runaway best teams, should the teams at the top be a little hesitant about where they are, that things have gone well? You're not necessarily running away with it. I'm asking about Winnipeg and Vancouver, I guess, and where you really think they're at. Is this the right time for them to push all their chips in at the deadline and make a run?
For Winnipeg and Vancouver in particular, they've actually probably had more consistency than the other teams that we would consider top teams. I would consider Toronto one of the teams, but you guys are talking about them, and just they're at the halfway mark. Points per game mark is putting them below 100, and that's a little bit of a shocker,
right,
to me. I think that's a shocker to a lot of people. At the same time, teams like Philly, Detroit, they've really surprised us what they've been able to do. But specifically with Vancouver and Winnipeg, should they push all in? I think Vancouver's done everything they can. They've made the most moves of anybody,
right?
Really changing their team from last year. So I commend them on that. You hear a lot about it's impossible to make moves, and yet somehow I feel like they've kind of rebuilt their D, starting back with Hronek, obviously, but continuing that forward with Zadorov. So good for them. Those have been great changes. They recognize that they do have some really great forwards. They just needed to strengthen that back end, get a healthy goalie back, and they look like world beaters this year. Winnipeg, on the other hand, I think that, they're always kind of in a similar mode for me. It's just all coming together. They changed the coach. That certainly over time has had an effect. They look like a more cohesive unit. They settled down some of their problems that were outstanding in terms of what happens with some of their star players. Are they going to leave? They didn't. I commend them as well on an excellent job of handling what was going on with their big club, but also continuing to just kind of quietly draft very well, in my opinion. I think Winnipeg's done a really nice job. I think Chevy's done a really nice job.
Regardless of the names that we've already started hearing, the feeling is the prices have never been more expensive here. It just seems like if you're in the ballpark of playing 15 or 16 minutes on defense, every team wants a first-round pick. Is it to the point now where basically teams are so desperate, you're willing to take that chance, even though the reality is they might be worth a third-rounder?
Yeah, I mean, you can go back and kind of dissect things that have happened. The Leafs made a big move, obviously, just to get Jake McCabe. They bought themselves down on the money, with Chicago retaining some of it. Is that worth it in the end? I don't know. What do you guys think? You see him every night. Is that worth it, what they paid for, the price?
Yeah, for $2 million a season, he's been better than that.
But not a replacement for Jake Muzzin.
No.
Right. And that's the way that you have to look at it, right? For $2 million a piece, Justin, I agree. A night, yes, absolutely. Was that the goal when you started out, though? Because you want to improve your club too. Is it an improvement over Muzzin? I don't think it's been. I like Jake a lot. I think he's a real heart and soul player. I think he gives everything he's got. But what you're saying, Kyper, is it's hard to upgrade your D.
Really hard.
I've always thought this going back a long time because I've put my money where my mouth is on it. When we took Victor Hedman, that really was the thought back then. It's just D are so darn hard to find in this league. If you can ever get a really good one, boy, is it valuable. Making moves to try to add it. I have to compliment Edmonton on the job they did in getting Ekholm. You look back at that now, they trade a first, they trade Tyson Barrie, they trade Reed Schaefer, and they end up with a guy that's, really changed Edmonton's look, in my opinion. If they can do that one more time, I'll feel great about their team. But it's hard just to do it once, never mind again. That's everybody's challenge right now.
Lots. You mentioned Hedman. Of course, that was the year that John Tavares, if I'm not mistaken, was 1-2 with Victor with Hedman. And I'm just wondering if you can kind of take us back then in terms of you picking second, and if you would have picked first. I mean, how tough of a decision. And we're watching John Tavares, and he's been he's done everything that you expected of him. I don't know if they expected him to become a 100-point man or a 120-point man, but very consistent over the years with the Leafs. But there seems to be like maybe a small trend where maybe the skating or maybe the play is coming down a little bit. But take us back to that draft in terms of if you were picking first overall, forward or defenseman, because Tavares clearly came in as a franchise type of player, and Hedman didn't necessarily.
That's right. Actually, Matt Duchene was the better player in year one, if truth be told. And I took a lot of flack for that back then because there were some people that let me know early on they weren't crazy about the pick that were on our staff. I talked about that this week. I never had to face the decision of what if we had first pick. And Jeff Merrick asked me that on the radio this week. And just like whenever anybody on your panel here asks me a question, I will answer it honestly. And I was thankful I never had to answer that question. I didn't want to have to answer that question. But the fact of the matter is, based on a lot of what we're saying in this conversation, I felt way back when, particularly with Tampa's circumstances, we would be better served with Victor Hedman long term. I never had to make that decision. I did have to undo what was our normal list in that process because, we did have Matt Duchene second. The problem is, as the general manager, you always retain the right for anybody picked in the top 5 to make that final call, regardless of what your staff says. That's not easy to do. I never felt great about that. Our staff worked their rear ends off. I appreciated all the work. I just knew that part of my job as general manager was to make these types of decisions, even if they're unpopular at the time with the staff. That's what we did. It's worked out fine for the Tampa Bay Lightning. John Tavares has been an absolute tremendous all-star player for his entire career. I'm just glad I never had to face that decision. I was very happy when we did not win the lottery that year. I honestly, I never said it to anybody. No one's ever asked me that question to this week, but I was always very at peace with it. Really, truly wanted to draft Victor. And, a lot of this could be self-serving too. As a former first overall pick, there's just a lot of extra baggage that goes with being picked first. There really is. It's just a little bit tougher. I experienced that personally. It wasn't always fun for me. I was delighted to be getting a great player at number 2, a player that we wanted. And as I'm admitting now, I would have stepped up and said, yeah, we're gonna go a different direction than maybe what the consensus is. That is what you're paid for. You also have to take the flack with that when you're wrong. But that's the way it honestly was. I met with John Tavares. I've never been more impressed by a 17, 18-year-old player at that time because of the level of his professionalism. You just touched on it, Kyper. You said, well, what about the skating today? Well, back then, privately, and these are just my private thoughts, I was concerned just a little bit about him hitting his full potential in this league because of his skating. John and I actually talked about it. After that conversation, I felt much better about it. And that was right after all the players were in Pittsburgh. We had them all come to Tampa together. We had all 3 players there in Tampa. I had a chance to meet with them back to back to back, to have dinner with them together, just to spend some time with all 3 of them and kind of see the differences. And John was by far the most mature, although Victor Hedman was also already kind of a seasoned pro playing in the Swedish Elite League. Mm-hmm. But John absolutely convinced me in those conversations, and he did it again at the Combine, that he was going to put into work to make sure that his skating got to a level where he could reach his full potential. And I do think he did that. And I commend him on that.
Lots thinking about some of the tough decisions general managers have to make. I look at the NHL and where certain teams are at heading towards a trade deadline. Philly certainly thought they would be a team selling assets, but they're in a playoff spot. Calgary thought they'd be in a team selling or in a spot to sell, and they're kind of in a playoff race. There are other teams like that. Where do you stand? Should teams be all the way in and just sell everyone they can? Can you do that where you kind of sell and still try to make it?
Doug Armstrong made a run at that a few years ago, but psychologically, you have really 2 types of general managers. The ones, and I could name some of the guys, at least that are not a manager right now, like Brian Burke, who's not necessarily, he doesn't necessarily believe, in my opinion, Berkey would have to correct me on this, because you're always trying to read everybody in the room. Yeah. You have to deal with these people. But I always felt like Berkey, if he was had a chance to be 7th or 8th, but didn't believe he had a legitimate chance to win, he wouldn't do that. While his other guys are absolutely the other way. Some of it has to do with circumstances. These are the real issues that GMs face. You have all kinds of pressures. How's it going in your reign as general manager? Are you solid? Can you afford to take more time to do it right? There's so many conflicting messages that you have to deal with on a daily basis. That is truly what makes it such a hard job to do. But I don't subscribe to the theory that just get in and you may win. I know we've seen teams over history. Everybody on this panel right now can name who they've been. We can go back to Edmonton's run, Carolina's year, Philly's run to the finals. We can recite all that. But the bottom line is you either believe in math or you don't. I happen to believe in math, and I don't like those odds. So I would never be all in. This year, though, my kind of macro view on what's going to happen is I'd be sneakily engaged in this deadline, because I don't think a lot of people are going to be. I think there's a lot of defeated teams, and overall, it'll be down as to who's willing to make a move. So I'd be out there early this year, as in right now, trying to lock some things down, because having been in different positions and roles in the past, you're always nervous that I'm not going to be able to get the guys I want if you're buying, but I'm also not going to be able to sell the guys I know I should. Philly, to me, is a fascinating one, Justin, because they really should be selling, in my opinion. And yet it's very hard to be a GM or a coach like Torts, look the players in the eye who are playing their rear ends off this year, overachieving, in my opinion, and say, and they know what happens when you're selling at the deadline. It's a non-vote of confidence.
Lots. Are the Calgary Flames the Philadelphia Flyers version in the West, because LA loses or wins 1 game in 10, and all of a sudden Calgary's sitting there going, yeah, baby. And the Leafs come in tonight in Calgary. They're on a 4-game losing streak. Where is a hiccup between a 4-game losing streak and losers of 10 of 11 for you?
Well, first off, on Calgary, I think that where they're at in a cycle, and you guys ask me questions, I'll answer it honestly. I really don't think that they should be doing anything, but since they have had some issues getting players signed, it's clear to me that they've kind of missed their window with the group of guys they have, and they really strongly need to move out the players they can't get signed, get the assets back. You don't want to end up kind of where Columbus did, to some respect. when they had Panarin and Bobrovsky and, they went for it and they shocked the world. They won the first round, but I feel like they've paid a price since then. I think Calgary you have to be cognizant of the past and be honest with your evaluations. And then you have to follow through on them. And that's not easy. So in a nice way, I'm trying to say that, yes, Calgary, in my opinion, should be sellers. I don't think they're going to get in. If they do get in, I think it's going to be really challenging for them to do any damage in the playoffs. And sometimes this is the hardest freaking thing to do. You have to take 2 steps, backwards to take 3 forward down the road.
Lots. I got called a stupid dummy idiot on the internet for saying the Leafs might have some questions about maybe selling. It's a tough world out there online, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the Leafs.
Where you can't live online, Justin. You cannot live online.
I try not to.
Yeah. You should quit your job if you don't like that.
Yeah,
just
no
like
kidding.
had a GM and people didn't like that we were thinking of trading certain players. It just is what it is. You accept that, or you don't. And you
right.
Don't do the
Oh,
job.
listen, I accept it. I just want to know your thoughts on the Leafs, though, and where they're at. Do you think that this is a team that should spend assets trying to get better?
Well, you'd have to show me the assets first.
Sure. We're going to trade Fraser Minton for Chris Tanev.
I'm being facetious. They are low on their assets, obviously. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows everybody's situation. Right. There's no secrets. But should they go all in, their situation for me is different than Calgary. Yeah. They're just at it. They're a step above that. That doesn't mean they'll always be, and it's not a slam in Calgary. It's a fluid equation. Every team is either moving forward or backwards. I want to make sure I don't get plagiarized on that. That's from Brian Burke. just for Bill Ackerman.
Throw him in the mix.
We read current here too, as you guys do. So the fans are out there. Isn't this a hockey show? Yeah. It's a hockey show.
I want to ask. Go ahead.
Brian Burke had always said that to me. So I always give Berkey credit for that because I think it's a simple thought, but it's a great thought to keep in mind. You're artificially trying to influence your club. The Toronto Maple Leafs should be trying to artificially make their club better for where they're at. It's not perfect, but that's what my opinion is for them. They have a very good hockey team.
I want to crawl in your head a little bit as from a executive perspective here, because I came at work today at around 1:30 Eastern, and it seemed like the Raptors president Messiah was on the air. He's talking about Spicy Pete being traded, and then I'm getting ready to go on the show, and I'm like, is that guy still talking? Like, can somebody get him to shut up? No, he went for how long?
Hour 15.
Hour 15 as the president of the Raptors.
Lots to say.
So my question to you is, last year I couldn't blink without seeing Jimmy Rutherford as the president kind of calm the waters down in Vancouver. And right now it's a little murky here in Toronto, but we have not heard from Brendan Shanahan. So how strategic is it for presidents now to come out and speak and talk to the management or the media? And when is it a good time to kind of back off, in your opinion? How important and strategic is that?
I think it's more important when things aren't going well to step up and take responsibility. I used to say that when I ran Octagon. I would be with the guys and we'd meet somebody, and some other agent might have recruited them, but you come in at a certain part and do your thing. And I'd say, look, I'm just the guy that's here to take all the blame when things go wrong. And if it goes right, everybody else is doing a wonderful job. And I was joking about that when I would say it, but I was also sincere. And that's how I feel a president should be. There's one thing you should know. Everybody has their own book. Like anybody that's managed a team, been an agent, gets to know everybody. Jimmy Rutherford is older than me. Okay. Jimmy was playing when I was in diapers. The one thing that people won't know about Jimmy Rutherford is he is absolutely relentless on asking people's opinions. Yeah. It's really impressive. Now you guys will say,
attribute.
What's this big deal about that? I mean, I remember like it was yesterday. I was talking to him. He said, all right, what's wrong with our team, Brian? What do you got? What do you think? And I was like, I don't like your D. I'll be honest. I'm honest. If people ask you, I always feel like it's, normally you just say, well, you guys are making progress. But if people truly want to know, then you always should tell them. That's my opinion in life. I told Jimmy that. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is he does it way more than most guys. This is not a slam against Brendan, but I've never heard that about him. Now, maybe he's a Hall of Fame player. He had a Hall of Fame career, obviously. Everybody has their own style. So I can't say anything why you haven't heard more maybe from Brendan. I can only talk about the people that you did, that I see patterns, fact patterns that, quite frankly, I think it's what's made them really great executives. Are there other guys that would never say a word? Lou Lamoriello has never asked my opinion, but when I asked for his opinion, he was the first person to return a call. And I'll always have respect for Lou for that. So, and in those moments when Lou is helping you, it's the most things you'll ever learn about Lou Lamoriello, because you never learn anything else outside of that.
So true.
I'm dead serious. But when you ask him in those moments, and I am not ashamed to admit, before we let go of coach in Tampa, I called two people, Brian Burke and Lou Lamoriello, mostly because I thought they were the only two that would get back to me right away, and they both did immediately. And Lou Lamoriello was an animal about it. He called me every day for weeks, see how I'm doing.
Like, I got it, Lou. Thanks.
Yeah, no, Lou was amazing. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how you handle it, Brian. And I appreciated it. I have my own opinions and thoughts, but you got to be able to ask for help, in my opinion. And there's a lot of guys in this league that have been really successful that do it really, really well.
Well, great. Now I feel guilty that I hit the ignore button when Sammy and Justin call me.
Thanks for leaning on him like we asked you to, Lots.
Now you need to confess. Who have you guys called to solve problems for the Leafs? I'm joking, you guys.
Lots. Great stuff, man. Really appreciate your candor in this segment, and welcome on our show anytime, pal. Thanks for doing this.
All right, I'm going to block both you guys.
Thanks, Lots. Appreciate it.
I don't
Brian
want any
Lawton speaks from a ton of experience.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think one of the thing I took away from that, and it's something an opinion I've always had, when you are a team that has the first overall draft pick and there's two good players,
you want to go second.
You want second. You want second, because you can always say if you're the second, well, we didn't have the first pick.
Yeah.
And if the guy turns out great that you got at the second, you'd be like, well,
we were taking him anyway.
No, not even though we were taking him anyway. It's like, well, we didn't have the pressure of having to make the decision, and we got the better guy anyway. Right? Unless it's like a Matthews or like a McDavid or a Bedard.
Yeah.
There's a little, I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
Do you remember last year, Jimmy Rutherford did a ton
Such a good point.
of TV to calm the water
I remember
down,
being
I
like,
think.
Just to
GM?
bury Boudreaux.
Well, and it was like, and it kind of,
he was great.
He had Patrick Alvin, his general manager, but he was the guy that said, nope, it's on me. I got to stand up and do this.
I haven't seen him this year.
Hasn't needed to.
No, they just
right?
He just eats popcorn, watches the game.
Now, let me ask you, here in Toronto, I mean, it's 4 games. It's not 9 or 10 game losing streak,
right.
and we haven't heard from Brendan Shanahan. If by chance this trend continues here throughout the weekend, do you think that at that point we should be hearing from him?
No.
I
mean, do I think we should? It would be great. I think Leafs fans would appreciate that. But I can't
Is
think...
it necessary? Will it help?
Outside Rutherford, though, I just don't have other examples of a president doing it where a GM should.
I think it just makes way too big a statement.
Yeah, it's like we are profoundly a mess.
He talks once a year at the end?
Tell you why they're keeping everyone.
Yeah. It's his annual, we're keeping everyone. And the one this year that was the most electrifying press conference in sports history, where he buried Kyle Dubas for 25 minutes.
Listen, I mean, this week we've heard the white noise around change the coach.
Oh, yeah.
If in fact it's not even in the thought process, would him coming out and supporting Sheldon put a rest to all that noise?
No.
Yeah, probably not.
No?
It's probably kerosene.
I think it's the worst thing you can do
You
because
do?
I feel like there's a lot of times where it's like the vote of confidence joke
Yeah.
with coaches in sports is like the worst thing you can get.
The other thing is like how much of this panic in Toronto is because it's Toronto. Like teams lose 4 games.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like good teams lose
Yeah.
4 games. And so how much of that is just volume and noise versus
Okay.
real concern?
Would you
and-
feel that way at 6 games?
Well, yeah, that's different. Sure.
It's different.
Changes things if it's 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 or whatever.
And listen,
yeah.
with all due respect, like it's Brendan Shanahan. Like his voice carries. It's a very powerful voice, and it's stronger than his general manager's voice.
Sure. The only thing I'll say is by doing it so infrequently, you put massive pressure on when you do it.
That's where it's strategic,
Yeah.
right? And say what you will, as many times as we heard from Jimmy Rutherford, you look back at it now and it's like, it's pretty impressive.
I don't even remember anything Jim said, though, because he's talked a lot. And that's what I mean, like when Dubas would almost never speak.
But Treliving's spoken a lot this year.
Right. And
He's
so
come on our show
it's
twice.
not a huge
and-
deal. He just kind of tells you what's
Yeah.
going on. And like we used to have those Dubas pressers and we're sitting there with notepads
Yeah.
and like didn't want to miss a thing. And it puts so much weight on all your words. And so maybe it's the case that if they spoke more often, it wouldn't be such
Listen,
a big deal.
I mean, they win tonight. They win like if they can get some points going. Hey, listen, that Vancouver game. I know we got the Calgary game tonight with the Leafs, but Vancouver's going to be looking at them, and I think I'm not sure they embarrassed Vancouver, but that was not remotely the Vancouver Canucks that we see now that lost
What's the score of that?
5-2.
Yeah, they beat him pretty good.
They beat them pretty good.
Yeah.
And I got to think, like Naz Kadri told us
Oh, yeah.
the other day, hey, we know what beating Toronto does.
Yeah. Nothing like beating the Leafs.
So they got their hands full and it starts tonight as well. All right, Sammy.
All right, it's game time, fellas, presented by Bet365. Visit the app for the latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. Kyper, to answer your question from earlier about the Flames and Leafs, Leafs are heavy faves tonight. Minus 135 favorites. So you can get the Flames plus 115. I would not recommend that bet at minus 135 for the Leafs. I mean, they could easily win the game, but that's just not good enough. I mean, the Leafs have lost 4 in a row. The Flames have won 4 in a row. Teams heading in different directions. You could look at a little value with the Flames there, in my opinion, but I would not be going on either side of that. The ones I am looking at, Ottawa Senators, you know how I like to look at teams that just should not be favored by a lot in a lot of spots?
Yeah.
The Ottawa Senators should never be minus 185 favorite against anyone.
185.
They're playing the Montreal Canadiens tonight. Give me the Montreal Canadiens at plus
The Habs
155.
who just beat the New Jersey Devils in regulation.
We'll talk about this a little bit more in news and notes. Minnesota Wild just announced that they lost their captain, Jared Spurgeon, out for the year, surgery. So they're reeling. They're going in the wrong direction. Lightning are playing a little bit better recently. Give me the Lightning minus 150 on home ice.
Oh, yeah.
And the last one, excellent hockey game tonight. Colorado versus Boston in Beantown. Could be a high event affair. And, Colorado has been underdogs quite a bit. And I think it's because they give up a lot. But
Because they have 3 hockey players.
yeah, they play McKinnon. But those 3 hockey players, maybe the 3
Yes.
best in the world. So
Right.
give me Colorado plus 130 in Boston tonight as my 3
about
picks
that.
for game time. Anything you have to add?
No, I really like the Colorado pick, and also I'm going to do Tampa Bay in regulation.
Yeah,
there.
like
Get a
that
little
too.
extra juice.
All right. That was Game Time, presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus, Ontario only. Please play responsibly.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll go through our NHL news and notes. What happens to Gensel in Pittsburgh? Head coach of the New Jersey Devils last night was not a happy camper. He took a pretty good run at a reporter.
That's not nice.
We have the sound of that as well. So tons to get into still after the break. Don't go away. The Real Kyper and Bourne Show. We're back. JB, Sammy McKee, who's on his way to Vegas, baby. Vegas.
Yeah, I was
Do you
going to put on
remember-
the jacket for this segment, but I decided not to.
Where's your Yogi Bear jacket?
It
It
Where is
does
that?
look like he's skinned.
Can you go get it? Seriously?
Yeah.
Yes.
Please go get it.
Yeah, I'll go.
So people think I'm not making it up.
Do you remember that little casino O'Shea's maybe? It was in the middle of all the like good ones on the strip.
Really?
We used to stay there. Oh yeah, it was like a cheap one on the strip. They don't have those anymore.
I only stayed at 5-star.
I'm
but-
sure. But my wife and I used to go stay at the crummy little one and gamble. And I got to tell you, with no kids, that's living. Oh,
Okay,
here we
we're
go.
sorry if you can't pick up the show on. Is that not Yogi Bear?
Was it
right there?
endangered?
No.
Hey, boo boo.
So
That is a hey boo boo.
the reason I wore it is because, as you know, we live in Canada.
We do.
And
Yeah.
it's quite cold.
Thanks, Tips.
And it's pretty warm, as you would be able to tell.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I didn't want to bring a huge parka, so I didn't want to. So I wore this.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a little,
Is that?
And given how cold it is, he had to go into a cave and getting off a hibernating bear.
They have security at these big hotels in Vegas.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're gonna let
kick
you
him
in.
right back
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, probably not. They call me Big Teddy, baby.
He's gonna walk out of here and someone's gonna throw a bucket of red paint on him. Animal.
Oh.
Hey, boo boo.
All right, where do you guys want to start?
This is a hot jacket.
Yeah, it's not
Lindy Ruff is not a happy guy these days. I mean, there's a sense of frustration for sure. They're seasoned guys. I mean, were we not talking about a team that was next level stuff on the, if they weren't a team that you could see in a conference final or a Stanley Cup final, like everybody felt they were close. They are not having a very good time these days.
No, you need someone to stop a hockey puck, right? When you don't get goaltending, the coach is in the crosshairs. Not that far removed from the people chanting "Sorry, Lindy" for chanting "Fire, Lindy," and it may not be too long before they start the other chant again. But
They're doing okay.
he's a little upset. Should we throw to this clip here? I don't know how to throw to it. I haven't heard it.
Yeah, well, this is coming off a 3-2 loss in regulation, mind you, and this is at home to the Montreal Canadiens. And a reporter asked him about a benching. So let's have a listen.
With Holtz, just 2 shifts after his obviously game-tying goal. What went into that?
Again, you don't watch the game very well.
Oh.
So if you look at the opportunity in the second period where he threw a puck in the middle of the ice to get a point-blank scoring chance, in a tight game, in a one-goal game, it's plays like that we're trying to get back in the game, and I dropped down to 3 lines. We happen to get back in the game. He understands, like we're trying to eliminate the pucks that go into the middle of the ice, the puck management part. So when you make a play like that, then it's going to be hard to get back on the ice. We just give him a quality scoring chance off a play where we put it in the middle of the ice, where we don't need to put it in the middle of the ice. I like this power play goal, a couple other things I like, but is he going to make the same play again?
Okay, for the record, that might be one of the best explanations to a benching I've ever heard
That's perfect.
from an NHL head coach.
Yes. I'll tell you exactly what happened. His goal is a power play goal. He threw the puck in the middle. We're trying to keep the puck out of the middle, so he's sitting on the bench.
With the
You don't watch the game very well.
with the one exception to
Keep that clip.
And now we
clip
have the
Keep
best
that.
drop ever.
is I don't. There has to be a history there. There had to have been something that kind of pissed Lindy off with this particular reporter. That's me looking at a 30,000 view.
I think he's got a problem with the player.
Why are you so pissy?
I'm going to need
No, but
Derek and
why
lead
are
you
you-
on
but
that. You don't
why-
watch the game very well.
Why
Drop
do
a
you
line
have to
for
take
Kip.
Why do you have to kind of dummy down a reporter with that first?
You don't watch the
comment?
game very well?
You don't watch the game. It's insulting. Why go there on that? If you're going to give that thoughtful answer, why not just give the thoughtful answer and leave out the part where you insult this guy?
You're right.
He's sour. They just lost to the Habs in regulation. He's
I
sour.
get
He's
it,
taking it out
but
on that
it
guy.
is a legitimate question
For
that
sure.
anybody can ask. What was your thought process into a benching? That's as legitimate of a question as any reporter can
bang on.
ask.
And also, the assumption in the reporter-coach relationship is that I don't watch the game as good as you.
Yeah, you're the coach, man.
Yeah, you're one of the 32 best on earth at this, apparently.
Brooksy, if I want to explain it to you, I would.
You know, if I knew how to do that, I'd be there. So, yeah, you're right. You don't need to go with the guy who's just looking for answers on something he doesn't.
Yeah.
Or maybe he knows and wants you to say it, whatever.
Now, if it was Luke Fox asking the question,
Sheldon might go at Luke. You never know.
There's always somebody that rubs somebody the wrong way, and I'm not suggesting. Listen, Luke. Honest to God, there's some times when I watch scrums and I'm like, "How can you not ask that? How can you not?"
Luke's always the one that asks.
Luke asks.
That
guy takes the bat off his shoulders at times.
Yeah.
And it's not easy for those guys to be on the road, be in the same room, look guys in the eye, and ask the tough question.
Not only do I not envy that, I have a ton of respect for it. You know, like when a coach is, they're mad, their livelihood's on the line, and you go, I think you made a mistake here. What happened?
Like, I agree wholeheartedly. There's not nothing that I can really add. It's not like everybody out there that's like, oh, Toronto, these people don't ask hard enough questions. And you go in there and do it. Well, because it's not easy. No, it's a really hard thing to do, to go in there and do it.
And 90% of the time we get a good answer that we play on here, Luke has asked the question. I'm not just saying that.
And it's intimidating.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what? Those guys want to intimidate the reporters into not asking those difficult questions.
No, you just get annoyed. Like I'm annoyed at you.
Is that Craig Tavish?
No.
Ron Wilson. Right.
That's questioning my integrity as a coach in this league.
Oh, he had it.
Oh.
He had some rivalries.
Dirk Brandeau's got a library right now.
This guy's on point.
Give me a little torch. Come on.
Oh, the best one all time is Phil Kessel. This guy's an idiot, man. This guy's an idiot. I forget who it was. Yeah, I think maybe it was Feschuk that he went after. I forget who he went after, but it was.
Yeah.
Well, Burke on his way out said about, I think it was Steve Simmons. He's like,
the best thing about today is I'll never have to. The crazy thing about that one, looking back, is that he did a presser when he left, Berkey.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often.
Fired presser? Is that not a thing?
No, but no, he was gone. Like
Put your mic on so you can play this tomorrow. Good.
And
Ron was pissed.
And the one thing I can say, playing on the other side of the media for over 20 years, is they're all competitors.
The media.
Yeah. But they stick together.
Yeah.
And they watch each other's back. And I'm sure, without knowing the story between Lindy and this reporter, that the general feeling is when you watch a head coach talk to a reporter like that, it could be any one of us. And
not going to go over great.
It doesn't go over great.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, again, outside of me knowing the whole story here, wouldn't be a bad idea.
Walk that one back.
For Lindy, if he feels like there's no other surface to the story, that he probably should say, I apologize for that comment. It was unnecessary.
Doesn't necessarily have to be publicly, but just see him at the rink in the morning or whatever and just.
And if he did that, it would go a long way with the other reporters too, because this stuff, like, if you build up, like,
while you're underachieving as a coach,
there's a chance that you can get the benefit of the doubt down the road.
Dude, they're 7th in the Metro right now.
And they run a lot of injuries. Hughes is out. Jack is out again.
Yeah.
This guy gets hurt a lot.
Yeah. I mean, he's a small guy who plays in the middle of the rink, right? That can happen for sure. Some good teams struggling, like, looking at Vegas, they've been struggling. A lot of injuries there too. They're without, is it Eichel, Carrier, Aiden Hill, Pietrangelo?
Like, it's kind of like they under the radar. Oh, Jack's out, and then Jack has surgery.
Yeah.
Eichel, we're speaking of.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, what does that mean? Like 4 weeks? 3 weeks? 8 weeks?
Yeah, they're second in the Pacific right now, 5 points ahead of LA, 7 behind Vancouver, but certainly hanging on with Edmonton going to be in that mix very soon. Edmonton's actually played 4 fewer games, so they're coming.
I kind of asked Brian Lawton about this a little bit, but LA losers of 10 of 11, I believe, or 9 of 10, one of them. And, like, where's your level of concern now? Because this team looked like Vancouver did does today. Winnipeg looks like today. They were humming here as a contender, and now the wheels have fallen off here. Do you like this team?
You know, I don't think I was ever as high on them as some people were, based on the lack of elite talent, like top end guys in LA. But they're a very good team. From top to bottom, pretty stout. Yep. Is Todd McClellan in trouble in LA? Would they be a team considering something?
I know that Rob Blake he loves him.
Okay.
He does, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Rob Blake wouldn't make a tough decision if he had to. Mm-hmm. But the one thing you got to remember about Todd McClellan, he is old school, and he
asks a lot,
leans on a lot of guys in that room, and some are okay with it,
right?
And there's some that can go, okay, I've just about had enough.
Yeah.
Kaliev, good goal scorer.
Great goal scorer.
And there seems to be a ton of friction there.
Conflict with the coach.
Sounding like it. I think there's a lot of teams that would love to trade for him.
Really?
Yep. And I think he's
I think that's a really interesting name.
I think he's a 25, 30 goal scorer.
Yeah.
But cannot find a spot on that team where he's...
And they don't score enough in LA.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Interesting name to watch.
All right. Joe Thornton retiring.
Yeah. Retiring his number next year.
Good. They should.
Wish Toronto never happened.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Don't you appreciate it? Doesn't it make you like him more that he wanted to come here and believed in this team and
everything?
He didn't do it.
Is it just...
It's one scene.
It's him in Toronto, or is it just generally sometimes players hanging on too long?
It was one scene in one reality television show about the Toronto Maple Leafs that changed my outlook on him forever. And it's the one we've referenced a million times. It's like, what's wrong? We're in first place. It's like that to me. It's just like, okay. Told me all I needed to know. I think he's had an all-time phenomenal career.
Yeah.
And he's one of the most loved guys. I just
listen.
I just wish the Toronto thing never happened. He was just down in San Jose, and he was that guy, and I got to think of him.
Maybe that's why Ryan Getzlaf is just content.
Yeah,
doing what he's doing.
It didn't ruin him for me. He still had an unbelievable career. He's an all-time guy.
Great Canadian hockey.
I wish that never happened. I don't protest to know Joe Thornton well, but his personality was always kind of loose, and he's the opposite of Jonathan Taves, Captain Serious, right? He's not Captain Serious. He's the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. He was
Captain Tarps off,
no shirt guy, photo bombing guy.
He could flip the puck.
I was kind of that guy as a player, so I root for guys like that. So it kind of hurts that he didn't get one.
Gensel, I had reported earlier that he turned down a $50 million contract at 8.5. Duba says he's not trading him. It's pure speculation.
Everything's great.
Got to decide, though. I mean, can you let him walk out the door for free and push the envelope on making or not making the playoffs? What do you do?
I don't think so.
Maybe I'll run into Kyle in Vegas, baby, when I see the Penguins on Saturday night.
Could you see him as a Vancouver Canuck?
Yes.
Ooh.
Do it.
Oh,
Jimmy,
my God. That would be fun to watch. Okay, our thanks to Brian Lawton earlier in the show. Eric Francis in our first hour. Jam-packed night. 11 games. Enjoy them all, and we're back tomorrow on the Real Kyper and Bourne Show.